I stared at my phone in complete disbelief, reading the text message for the third time. We want a peaceful holiday with Sarah's family this year. Maybe skip this one? My parents had just uninvited me from Thanksgiving. Me, the son who had spent the last 10 years hosting every family gathering, paying for vacations, and bailing out relatives whenever they needed help. Standing on the terrace of my French villa, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, I felt a mix of hurt and anger wash over me. After everything I'd done for this family, they were choosing my sister Sarah and her toxic husband Brad over me. I typed back a simple response: enjoy. What my parents didn't realize was that I had already sent invitations to our entire extended family, my college friends, and business associates for a Thanksgiving celebration at my villa. They had no idea what was coming. The irony wasn't lost on me as I set my phone down on the marble countertop of my villa's kitchen. At 32, I had built everything I'd ever dreamed of. My tech startup had sold for $28 million just 18 months ago, and this 6-bedroom French villa in Provence had been my celebration purchase. I'd worked 16-hour days for 8 years to get here, sleeping on friends' couches and eating ramen noodles while building my company from nothing. But success hadn't changed who I was at heart. I still called my grandmother Dorothy every Sunday, still remembered everyone's birthdays, still showed up when family needed me. For the past decade, I'd been the family's unofficial host, turning my apartments and eventually my California home into gathering places for holidays, birthdays, and celebrations. I'd paid for family vacations to Hawaii, helped cousins with college tuition, and even covered my uncle's medical bills when his insurance fell short. My sister Sarah was 3 years younger than me, and our relationship had always been complicated. She was beautiful, charming when she wanted to be, but she had a pattern of making poor decisions and expecting everyone else to clean up the mess. 3 years ago, she married Brad, a 34-year-old man who worked in middle management at a logistics company and seemed to resent everything about our family's success. From the beginning, Brad had been trouble. He made inappropriate comments at dinner tables, started political arguments at birthday parties, and had a habit of borrowing money from family members that he never seemed to remember to pay back. My parents, Helen and Robert, both in their early 60s, seemed blind to Brad's obvious flaws. They were so relieved that Sarah had found someone willing to marry her after a series of failed relationships that they overlooked every red flag. The worst part was how Brad treated me specifically. He seemed threatened by my success, constantly making snide comments about my fancy lifestyle and how I was showing off whenever I tried to include the family in my good fortune. When I'd bought everyone first-class tickets to visit me in California, Brad had complained that I was making everyone else look poor. When I'd offered to pay for a family cruise, he'd convinced Sarah to decline because accepting would be charity. This Thanksgiving was supposed to be special for another reason entirely. I'd planned to announce my engagement to Claire, a brilliant French architect I'd met 6 months ago while house hunting in Provence. Claire was elegant, kind, and had a way of making me feel grounded despite all the chaos of my business success. Her parents were visiting from Paris for the holiday, and I'd been looking forward to introducing them to my American family traditions. But now, staring at that text message, I realized my parents had already decided my presence would somehow disrupt their peaceful holiday. The betrayal cut deeper than any business setback I'd ever experienced. My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. It was my cousin Marcus calling from Denver. "Hey Robin, I'm confused about something," Marcus said without preamble. "I was talking to Aunt Helen yesterday about travel plans for Thanksgiving at your place, and she told me you'd decided not to host this year because you're too busy with your fancy lifestyle now. That doesn't sound like you, man." I felt my stomach drop. "She said what?" "Yeah, she made it sound like you'd gotten too sophisticated for family gatherings. I was bummed because Jenny and the kids were really looking forward to seeing your new place in France. We've been saving up for months for the plane tickets." The betrayal was even worse than I'd thought. My parents hadn't just excluded me from their gathering. They'd been actively telling our extended family that I was the one pulling away, that I thought I was too good for them now. They were painting me as the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. "Marcus," I said carefully, I never canceled anything. In fact, I've been planning an incredible Thanksgiving celebration here. My parents uninvited themselves, not the other way around. There was a long pause. Are you serious? So the invitation still stands? Absolutely. I want you and Jenny and the kids here. I want everyone here who actually wants to celebrate together. After I hung up with Marcus, I sat in my kitchen for a long moment, processing what had just happened. My parents hadn't just hurt me. They'd been systematically damaging my relationships with the entire extended family, making me look selfish and arrogant to people I loved. That's when I made my decision. If my parents wanted to have their peaceful Thanksgiving with Brad's toxic energy, they could have it. But I was going to show them exactly what they'd chosen to walk away from. I spent the next 4 hours making phone calls, and with each conversation, my anger transformed into something more powerful: determination. I started with my grandparents, my father's parents, who lived in an assisted living facility in Phoenix. "Grandma Dorothy," I said when she picked up, "how would you feel about spending Thanksgiving in France with me?" There was a sharp intake of breath. "Oh, honey, I would love that, but your mother said you were too busy with your sophisticated life to bother with family gatherings anymore." My jaw clenched. "Grandma, I never said that. I've been planning a celebration at my villa for months. I want you and Grandpa here. I'll arrange everything." Dorothy's voice broke. "Robin, I've been so hurt thinking you didn't want to see us anymore. Your grandfather and I have been telling everyone how proud we are of your success, but Helen made it sound like success had changed you." "It hasn't changed me, Grandma. I'm still the same person who calls you every Sunday and remembers that you like extra marshmallows on your sweet potatoes." By the time I hung up, Dorothy was crying happy tears and promising that she and Grandpa would be on a plane within 48 hours. Next, I called my Uncle Tommy and Aunt Lisa in Chicago. They had 3 teenage kids who I'd helped with summer internships at tech companies. Lisa answered on the second ring. "Robin, what a surprise. We were just talking about how much we missed your Thanksgiving gatherings. Why aren't you coming to this year's?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Well, Helen said you decided to keep things small this year, just close family. She made it sound like you didn't want the chaos of all us cousins and kids running around." I explained the real situation to Lisa, and her response was immediate anger on my behalf. "That is completely unacceptable, Robin. You've been nothing but generous to this family for years. Tommy and I will be there, and we're bringing the kids. They adore you." The pattern continued with every call. My Aunt Patricia in Seattle had been told I was taking a break from hosting. My cousin David in Miami heard I was focusing on my European social circle now. Each lie my parents had told painted me as someone who had abandoned my family values for material success. But the most heartbreaking call was to my cousin Amanda in Boston. Amanda was a single mother of 2 who'd been struggling financially since her divorce. I'd quietly helped her with her mortgage payments last year, and she'd invited me to her daughter's birthday party just last month via video call since I was in France. "Amanda, are you coming to Thanksgiving?" I asked. "Oh, Robin, I can't afford to fly to France right now, and honestly, your mom said you probably wouldn't notice if I wasn't there since you're so focused on impressing Claire's family." "Amanda, stop right there. First, I'm paying for your flights and the kids' flights. Second, I specifically want you here because you're family, and I love you and the girls. Third, my mother had no right to speak for me." Amanda was quiet for a moment. "She really said you were too busy for us?" "She did, and she was wrong. I want my family here, Amanda. All of my family who wants to be here." I also called my college roommates Jake and Tommy, both of whom had remained close friends over the years. Jake was a former Navy officer who now ran a security consulting firm, and Tommy was a chef who owned 3 restaurants in San Francisco. Both were single and always up for an adventure. "France for Thanksgiving? Are you kidding me?" Jake laughed. "I'm in. Do you need me to bring anything? Like my passport and an appetite?" Tommy was equally enthusiastic. "I can bring some wine from my collection and help with cooking if you want." "This sounds amazing, man." My business partner, Elena, who'd been instrumental in our startup's success, was thrilled to be included. "I've been wanting to see this villa you keep raving about," she said. "Plus, I love the idea of an international Thanksgiving, very modern." By the end of my calling marathon, I had 32 people confirmed for Thanksgiving dinner at my villa. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins with their children, college friends, business associates, and Claire's parents who were arriving from Paris the day before. But the most important call was to Claire herself. "Mon amour," she said when she picked up. "You sound stressed. What's happening?" I explained the entire situation, and Claire listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Your parents made a very foolish choice," she said finally. "But you are turning it into something beautiful. This is why I love you, Robin. You don't just react to hurt, you create something better." "Are you okay with having this many people at our place?" I asked. "Our place," she repeated warmly. "I love that. And yes, I'm more than okay with it. I think your family needs to see who you really are, and this will show them perfectly." That evening, I hired a local event coordinator named Margot who specialized in large gatherings. She assured me that hosting 32 people for a traditional American Thanksgiving feast in a French villa was completely doable with the right planning. "We'll need additional tables, chairs, and place settings," Margot explained as we walked through the villa. "I can bring in a professional chef who understands American holiday traditions, and we'll set up the main dining in your great room with overflow seating on the terrace, since the weather is still beautiful. I want this to feel like family," I told her. "Elegant but warm, sophisticated but not stuffy." "I understand perfectly," Margot smiled. "We'll create an atmosphere that celebrates both luxury and love." That night, I created a group text with all the attendees and sent photos of the villa, the surrounding lavender fields, and the view of the Mediterranean. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. "Marcus, this place is incredible. The kids are going crazy with excitement." Dorothy, "Oh my goodness, Robin. This is like a fairy tale." Amanda, "I can't believe this is real." The girls keep staring at the photos. Elena, "You've outdone yourself. This is going to be legendary." As I went to bed that night, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. My parents had tried to exclude me, but instead, they'd given me the opportunity to create something extraordinary. I was going to host the most memorable Thanksgiving our family had ever experienced. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation that felt more exciting than stressful. Margot proved to be worth every euro I was paying her. She coordinated everything from airport pickups to dietary restrictions, turning my villa into a perfect blend of French elegance and American comfort. The chef she'd hired, a woman named Beatrice who'd trained in New York before moving to France, understood exactly what I wanted. "American Thanksgiving with French sophistication," she said as we planned the menu. "Traditional flavors but elevated presentation." We planned roasted turkeys with herb butter and cognac gravy, stuffing made with French bread and chestnuts, sweet potatoes with maple syrup and pecans, green bean casserole with crispy fried shallots, cranberry sauce with orange and thyme, and pumpkin and pecan pies with hand-whipped cream. Everything would be served on the beautiful French china that came with the villa, creating an atmosphere that was both familiar and extraordinary. My family started arriving Thursday morning, and the joy on their faces as they saw the villa made every euro I'd spent feel worthwhile. Dorothy and Grandpa Robert arrived first, and watching Dorothy's face light up as she walked through the front door brought tears to my eyes. "Robin, sweetheart," she whispered, taking my hands in hers, "this place is more beautiful than any magazine picture. But what makes it special is that you wanted us here." Grandpa Robert, usually a man of few words, stood on the terrace, looking out at the Mediterranean, and said simply, "You done good, son. You done real good." Marcus and his family arrived next, and his twin 8-year-old daughters immediately fell in love with the villa's garden. "Uncle Robin, can we pick lavender?" they asked, and I spent an hour with them, learning about the different varieties growing around the property. Amanda arrived with her 2 daughters, ages 10 and 12, and I could see her fighting back tears as she looked around. "I feel like I'm in a movie," she said quietly. "Thank you for making this possible." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "This wouldn't be the same without you and the girls." Jake and Tommy arrived together, having met up at the airport in Paris. Jake immediately started taking photos of the view, while Tommy headed straight for the kitchen to introduce himself to Beatrice and offer his assistance. "This is insane, Robin," Jake said as we stood on the terrace. "I've stayed in nice places for work, but this is next level. And look how happy everyone is." He was right. The villa was filled with laughter, conversations in multiple languages, as Claire's parents chatted with my relatives, children running through gardens, and adults catching up on months of missed connection. Elena arrived and immediately started networking with Claire's father, who turned out to be a retired engineer with fascinating stories about building projects across Europe. Uncle Tommy and Aunt Lisa brought their teenagers, who were initially worried about being bored at a fancy French house but quickly discovered the villa's game room and pool. Soon they were teaching Claire's teenage niece, who was visiting from Paris, how to play American pool games. As the afternoon went on, I found myself documenting the gathering naturally. Not for show, but because I wanted to remember every moment. I took photos of my grandmother teaching Claire's mother how to make her famous stuffing. I captured Marcus's daughters picking flowers with Amanda's girls. I recorded a video of Uncle Tommy and Jake debating football statistics while setting up tables on the terrace. Without really thinking about it, I shared some of these moments on social media, not because I wanted to show off, but because the joy was too beautiful not to share. I posted a photo of 4 generations of family gathered around my grandmother as she told stories about Thanksgivings during World War II. I shared a video of the children playing hide and seek in the lavender fields, while their parents laughed and called after them. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. Friends from college, business contacts, and extended family members who couldn't make the trip all commented about how beautiful and joyful everything looked. But as the notifications kept coming, I noticed something else. My phone started buzzing with calls and messages from people who weren't at the villa. My cousin Beth from Portland. "Robin, this looks amazing. I didn't know you were hosting this year. Mom said you weren't doing family stuff anymore." My Uncle Frank from Dallas. "Buddy, I'm seeing these photos and I'm confused. Helen told me you'd decided to keep things small with just Claire's family. This looks like the opposite of small." With each message, the picture became clearer. My parents hadn't just uninvited me from their gathering. They'd systematically contacted our entire extended family and lied about my intentions, making me look like I'd abandoned them for a more sophisticated social circle. But now, seeing my social media posts, family members were realizing they'd been lied to. The gathering I was hosting looked exactly like the warm, inclusive celebrations I'd always organized, just in a more beautiful setting. Around 5 in the evening, as Beatrice and her team were putting the finishing touches on dinner preparation, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Robin." Helen's voice was tight with what sounded like panic. "I'm seeing your posts online. What's going on there?" "I'm hosting Thanksgiving, Mom. Just like I told you I was planning to do months ago. But you said you were going to skip this year." "No, Mom. You told me to skip this year. You said you wanted a peaceful holiday with Sarah's family. I said I'd enjoy my own celebration, and that's what I'm doing." There was a long pause. "Robin, when I said skip this year, I meant skip coming to our house. I didn't mean you should host your own thing. What did you think I was going to do? Sit alone in my villa eating a sad turkey sandwich?" I didn't think." "No, you didn't think. And you definitely didn't think about how your lies to the rest of the family would make me look." "What lies?" "Mom, I've had 8 different relatives call me today, asking why I told them I was too sophisticated for family gatherings now. Cousin Beth is crying in Portland because she thought I didn't want her around anymore. Grandma Dorothy spent 2 months thinking I'd abandoned the family." Helen was quiet for a long moment. "I may have misunderstood your situation." "You may have?" I felt my anger rising. "Mom, look at my posts. Look at how happy everyone is. This is who I am. This is what I do. I bring family together. I don't push them away." Before she could respond, I heard Brad's voice in the background. "Is that Robin showing off again? Tell him we don't need his charity." That's when I hung up. Claire found me a few minutes later, sitting alone in my office, with my head in my hands. "The family you chose is having a beautiful time," she said gently. "Don't let the family you're related to steal your joy." She was right. When I walked back out to the main gathering, I was greeted by my grandmother, asking if I'd help her find the right wine to pair with dinner. Marcus's daughters showing me the collection of lavender they'd gathered for their teachers back home, and Amanda's oldest daughter asking if she could interview me for a school project about successful entrepreneurs. This was my family. These were the people who showed up when invited, who celebrated success instead of resenting it, who understood that love isn't diminished by distance or prosperity. Dinner was scheduled for 7, and as we all gathered around the expanded dining table that now stretched from the formal dining room onto the covered terrace, I looked around at 32 faces lit by candles and fairy lights. Claire's father stood to offer a toast in his charming accented English. "To Robin," he said, raising his glass, "who has shown us that family is not just about blood, but about choosing to create joy together." As everyone raised their glasses, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in months. My parents had tried to exclude me, but they'd actually given me something precious: the clarity to see who my real family was. By 8:30 that evening, my phone was exploding with notifications, and not just the happy comments from dinner guests posting their own photos. My mother had called 6 times. My father had called twice. Even my sister Sarah had tried to reach me. I was sitting in the villa's library with Jake and Elena, sharing cognac and discussing everything from business ventures to travel plans, when Claire appeared in the doorway looking concerned. "Your grandmother wants to talk to you," she said. "She seems upset about something." I found Dorothy in the guest room she was sharing with Grandpa Robert, sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone in her hands and tears in her eyes. "Grandma, what's wrong?" "I just got a call from your mother," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Robin, what that woman said to me was unforgivable." "What did she say?" "She had the nerve to ask me why I came to France instead of supporting the family by going to Sarah's house. She said I was encouraging your selfishness by participating in your show-off gathering." I sat down next to her, my own anger building. "She said what?" "That's not even the worst part," Dorothy continued. "She said that I was too old to understand how much damage I was doing to family unity by choosing sides." Too old. I may be 78 years old, but I'm not too old to recognize love when I see it. Grandpa Robert spoke up from his chair by the window. "Your mother called me too, son. Asked if we realized we were being used as props in your social media campaign. I told her she was talking nonsense, but it made me think." "Think about what, Grandpa?" "About how your parents have been acting lately. This isn't the first time they've said strange things about you. Last month, your mother told me you were too busy to call me anymore, but you call me every Sunday like clockwork. Made me wonder what else she's been saying." Dorothy nodded vigorously. "She told my sister June that you'd become too good for family gatherings. But June's been wanting to invite you to her grandson's graduation party, and she was afraid to ask because Helen made it sound like you looked down on family celebrations now." "That's not true, Grandma. None of that is true." "Of course it's not true." Dorothy's voice got stronger. "Look around this place, Robin. You didn't just invite family. You flew us here. You're feeding us like royalty. You hired people to take care of every detail. This isn't showing off. This is love expressed through action." My phone rang again. This time it was my father. "Dad," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Robin, your mother is very upset about this situation." "Which situation would that be? The situation where you uninvited me from Thanksgiving? Or the situation where you told the entire family I was too arrogant to want them around anymore?" "Son, I think there's been some miscommunication here." "Miscommunication?" "Dad, I have 32 family members and friends here who were told by you and Mom that I didn't want to see them anymore. Marcus saved for months to afford plane tickets to a gathering that you told him I'd canceled because I was too sophisticated for family now." There was a long pause. We may have misspoke about your intentions. You may have misspoke? Dad, look at my social media right now. Look at the photos. Does this look like someone who's too good for family? I heard him talking to someone in the background, presumably looking at the posts. When he came back on the line, his voice had changed. Robin, this looks beautiful. This looks like the kind of gathering you've always organized. Because it is, Dad. This is exactly what I planned to do. Host Thanksgiving for the family. The family you told me you didn't want me to be around for. We didn't mean. What did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you chose Sarah and Brad over me, and then tried to make me look like the bad guy for being hurt about it. Another pause. Then, things at Sarah's aren't going well. What do you mean? Brad got drunk before dinner even started. He made some inappropriate comments about your mother's cooking, threw a tantrum when someone mentioned your success, and spent most of the evening complaining about how your social media posts were making him look bad. Sarah's been crying in the bathroom for the last hour. I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for my sister, frustration with my parents, and a growing understanding that there was more to this story than family favoritism. Dad, where are you right now? We're sitting in Sarah's living room. Brad passed out on the couch about an hour ago, and Sarah locked herself in the bedroom. It's just me, your mother, and Brad's parents sitting here in silence. How many people were at dinner? 7. Us, Sarah, and Brad's parents. 7 people. While I had 32 people celebrating together in France. Dad, do you understand what you chose? You chose a miserable evening with 7 people over a joyful celebration with 32 people who love this family. Robin, I don't know how to fix this. Before I could respond, I heard shouting in the background. Then my father's voice muffled. Brad, calm down. There's no need to yell. Then Brad's voice, loud and slurred. Is that Robin? Give me the phone. I want to talk to Mr. Perfect. Brad, you're drunk. Go back to sleep. Give me the damn phone. I heard a scuffle, and then Brad's voice came through clearly. Robin, you think you're so much better than everyone else with your fancy house and your fancy friends. Brad, you're drunk. Give the phone back to my father. You made my wife cry tonight. You know that? All those pictures of your perfect little party made her realize how pathetic our life is. Thanks a lot. Brad, if Sarah is unhappy, maybe you should think about why that is instead of blaming me for celebrating with my family. Your family? Brad laughed bitterly. These people aren't your real family. Your real family is here, and you abandoned us. I was uninvited, Brad, by my parents, who then lied to everyone about why I wasn't coming. Whatever, man. Enjoy your show-off party. The line went dead. I sat there holding my phone, processing what had just happened. My parents were trapped in a miserable evening they'd chosen over celebration and joy. My sister was crying in her bedroom, while her drunk husband insulted our mother and blamed me for his own failures. And somehow, I was supposed to feel guilty for hosting a beautiful gathering with people who actually wanted to be together. Claire appeared beside me. That sounded intense. My parents are realizing they made a terrible mistake, but I don't think they understand the full extent of what they've done yet. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. But this one wasn't from my parents. It was from Sarah. Robin, I need to talk to you. Can you call me when you get this? Please don't tell Mom and Dad I texted you. I looked at Claire, who had read the message over my shoulder. Call her, Claire said. Something isn't right here. I stepped out onto the terrace, where the evening air was cool and the sounds of family laughter drifted from inside. Sarah answered on the first ring. Robin? Her voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, what's going on? I can't talk long. Brad's asleep, but he might wake up. She paused, and I could hear her crying. Robin, I'm so sorry about Thanksgiving. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. What do you mean? I begged Mom and Dad to uninvite you. It was my idea. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? Why? Because Brad said if you came to Thanksgiving and everyone saw how successful you are compared to him, he was going to leave me. He said he couldn't handle being around you anymore because it made him feel like a failure. Sarah, that's not. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I know it's not your fault that you're successful and he's not. I know it's not fair to blame you for his insecurities. But Robin, I can't lose him. Sarah, listen to yourself. You're afraid to lose a man who threatens to leave you if your own brother comes to dinner? You don't understand. I'm 32 years old and I've never had a relationship last this long. Everyone else is married with kids, and I finally found someone who wants to be with me. But does he really want to be with you, Sarah? Or does he want to control you? There was a long silence. Then, Robin, can I tell you something? Promise you won't tell Mom and Dad? A promise. Brad doesn't let me have access to my own paycheck anymore. He says he's better with money management, so my direct deposit goes into his account, and he gives me an allowance for groceries and gas. And he checks my bank account online every day to see what I spend. I felt a chill run down my spine. Sarah, that's financial abuse. He says it's practical. He says couples should share financial responsibility. Sharing financial responsibility means you both have access and input. What you're describing is control. And Robin? Her voice got even quieter. He's been getting physical when he drinks. Not hitting me, but grabbing my arms hard enough to leave bruises, throwing things when he gets angry. Last week he put his fist through the bathroom door during an argument. Sarah, you need to get out of there. I can't. Where would I go? I don't have any money saved because he controls everything. I don't have anywhere to live because we live in his apartment. I don't even have a car anymore because he said we didn't need 2 cars and he sold mine. Sarah, you have family who would help you. Do I? Because tonight, when I saw all those pictures of your celebration, I realized that I don't even know who our family is anymore. I've been so focused on keeping Brad happy that I've lost track of everything else. Sarah, you could come here, right now, tonight. I'll buy you a plane ticket, and you can be here tomorrow. Brad would never let me go to France to visit you. Brad doesn't get to let you do anything. You're an adult woman. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, Robin, I think I've made a terrible mistake. Not just about Thanksgiving. About everything. It's not too late to fix it, Sarah. But you have to be willing to ask for help. I'm scared. I know you are. But I'm your brother, and I love you, and I will help you figure this out if you let me. Before Sarah could respond, I heard Brad's voice in the background. Sarah, who are you talking to? Get in here. I have to go, she whispered. I'll call you tomorrow when he goes to work. The line went dead, and I stood on the terrace feeling like my world had shifted completely. This wasn't just about family favoritism or hurt feelings anymore. My sister was trapped in an abusive relationship, and my parents had become enablers without even realizing it. I walked back inside to find Claire waiting for me in the library. How bad is it? She asked. Worse than I thought, I said, and told her everything Sarah had revealed. Claire listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. Robin, she said when I finished, your sister is in danger. Financial abuse and physical intimidation escalate. You can't wait for her to find the courage to leave on her own. But I can't force her to leave either. No, but you can make it easier for her to choose to leave. You can create a safe path out. I realized Claire was right. This wasn't about family drama anymore. This was about protecting my sister from a man who was systematically isolating and controlling her. And tomorrow, I was going to start working on a plan to get her out. I barely slept that night, my mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. By 6 a.m, I was sitting in my office with my laptop, researching domestic violence resources and creating a plan to help Sarah escape her situation safely. Claire found me there at 7:30 with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. Have you been up all night? I couldn't stop thinking about what Sarah told me. Claire, I've been so focused on feeling hurt about being excluded from Thanksgiving that I missed the signs that my sister is being abused. You couldn't have known based on what your parents told you. But I should have paid more attention to the patterns. Brad's controlling behavior, his resentment of my success, The way Sarah has been withdrawing from family activities. I thought she was just being loyal to her husband, but she was actually being isolated. Claire sat down across from me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I need to call Jake. He has experience with these situations from his military and security work, and I want to contact a lawyer who specializes in domestic violence cases. And then I'm going to give Sarah a way out that doesn't require her to be brave all at once. I'm going to make it easy for her to say yes to help. Jake was an early riser, so when I called him at 8 o'clock, he was already awake and having coffee on his terrace. Jake, I need your professional opinion on something serious. I explained Sarah's situation in detail, and Jake's response was immediate and grim. Robin, what you're describing is textbook domestic abuse, financial control, isolation from family, escalating physical intimidation, and threats of abandonment to maintain power. This is going to get worse, not better. What's the safest way to get her out? The most dangerous time for an abuse victim is when they try to leave. We need to plan this carefully. Does she have a passport? I think so. She went to Mexico with Brad last year. Good. Here's what I recommend. Create a reason for her to travel that doesn't look like she's leaving him. A sister bonding trip, a work opportunity, something that looks temporary. Get her somewhere safe where she can think clearly without his influence. Then connect her with legal and financial resources so she can make an informed decision about her future. Would you be willing to help with this? Absolutely. This is exactly the kind of situation where having security expertise is important. We need to think about her safety, your safety, and the legal implications of helping someone leave an abusive relationship. My next call was to Elena, who had connections in the legal field through our business work. Elena, I need a referral to a lawyer who specializes in domestic violence cases, preferably someone who can handle cases across state lines. That's very specific. Is everything okay? I explained the situation, and Elena immediately shifted into her problem-solving mode. I know exactly who you need. Maria Santos in Los Angeles. She's brilliant, she's compassionate, and she handles complex cases involving financial abuse and interstate issues. I'll get you her direct number. Within an hour, I was on the phone with Maria Santos, explaining Sarah's situation and asking about the legal implications of helping her leave. The most important thing is documenting everything, Maria explained. Financial records, any evidence of threats or physical intimidation, and establishing a paper trail that shows she was being controlled rather than making independent decisions. If she can get bank statements showing that her paychecks were being diverted without her consent, that's financial abuse. What about helping her travel to safety? Is there anything I need to be careful about? As long as she's traveling voluntarily and you're not hiding her location from law enforcement, you're fine. In fact, having family support during this process is crucial. Many abuse victims don't leave because they feel like they have nowhere to go. And if he tries to claim she abandoned their marriage or stole money, if the money was her earnings and he was controlling access to it, she's not stealing anything. She's reclaiming her own financial independence. But we'll want to document everything carefully. See, by noon I had a plan. I called Sarah's work number, knowing Brad wouldn't monitor her office phone as closely as her personal phone. Sarah, it's Robin. Can you talk? I only have a few minutes. Brad picks me up for lunch. Sarah, I want to invite you to come visit me in France. A sister trip. You can tell Brad it's just for a few days, maybe a long weekend. I'll pay for everything, and it'll give you a chance to see my new place. Robin, Brad would never agree to that. What if it wasn't just a fun trip? What if it was something you could frame as benefiting both of you? What do you mean? I'm starting a new business venture that involves importing French artisanal products to the United States. I need someone I trust to help me evaluate suppliers and understand the market. It would be a legitimate work opportunity that could benefit your resume and potentially lead to income. There was a pause. That's actually brilliant. Brad is always complaining that I don't make enough money. If I framed it as a business opportunity. Exactly. It's not about leaving him or relationship problems. It's about professional development and potentially increasing your earning potential. How long are we talking about? A week. Long enough for you to see some suppliers, understand the business, and have time to think clearly away from your daily stress. Robin, I want to say yes, but I'm scared. What if he gets suspicious? Sarah, what's the worst that could happen if you take a business trip to France for a week? He could get angry and break up with me. And what's the worst that could happen if you stay in a relationship where you're afraid to take a business trip? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. You're right. Let me think about how to present this to him. Sarah, I'm going to email you some information about the business opportunity to your work email. Show him that it's legitimate. And remember, this is your decision. You don't need his permission to travel for work. That evening, Sarah called me back. I told him about the business opportunity. He wasn't happy about it, but when I showed him that it could lead to better income, he said I could go. Robin, I'm scared, but I want to do this. When can you leave? This weekend. I told my boss I need a few days off for a family business opportunity, and she approved it. Perfect. I'm booking your flight right now. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Jake researched Brad's background and discovered he had a history of job hopping and financial problems that he'd hidden from Sarah and my parents. Maria Santos prepared legal documents that would help Sarah establish her independence if she chose to leave the relationship. I set up a separate bank account for Sarah and transferred enough money to give her options. Most importantly, I talked to my grandmother Dorothy about the situation. Despite being 78 years old, Dorothy had experience that proved invaluable. Robin, I was married to an abusive man for 3 years in my 20s before I met your grandfather, she told me privately. The hardest part isn't deciding to leave. It's believing you deserve better and that you can survive on your own. What helped you leave? Having somewhere safe to go and people who believed in me. Your sister needs both of those things. Grandma, would you be willing to stay in France for an extra week? I think Sarah might need to talk to someone who's been through this. Wild horses couldn't drag me away, sweetheart. That girl is going to need all the family support she can get. On Friday evening, Sarah's plane landed in Marseille. I picked her up alone, wanting to give her space to decompress before she had to explain anything to anyone. The first thing I noticed was how thin she looked, how nervous she seemed. The second thing I noticed was the faint bruise on her upper arm that she tried to hide with her sweater. Sarah, I'm so glad you came. Robin, I almost changed my mind 3 times at the airport. Brad called me 6 times during the flight layover, demanding that I come home immediately. What did you tell him? That I was already here, and it was just for a few days for business. But he sounded really angry. Sarah, you're safe here. You're with family who loves you. You don't have to make any big decisions right now. Just breathe and let yourself think clearly for the first time in months. That night, Sarah sat on the terrace with me, Claire, and my grandmother, looking out at the Mediterranean Sea and talking about everything except Brad and her relationship problems. We talked about the villa, about Claire's architecture work, about my grandmother's stories of traveling through Europe in the 1970s. For the first time in months, I saw my sister laugh genuinely. But on Saturday morning, everything changed. I woke up to my phone, ringing at 6 a.m. It was Elena calling from California. Robin, we have a problem. Brad is on his way to France. What do you mean? Jake's been monitoring the situation, and Brad bought a plane ticket last night. He'll be landing in Marseille this afternoon. Jake thinks Sarah told him where she was staying. I felt my stomach drop. How did he afford a plane ticket to France? That's the concerning part. Jake found out that Brad borrowed money against Sarah's car title without her knowledge. He used her asset as collateral to chase her to France. This wasn't just about a controlling husband anymore. Brad was escalating in ways that put Sarah in real danger. I had to protect my sister, and I had very little time to figure out how. I found Sarah in the breakfast room, picking at a croissant while staring out at the garden. She looked up when I entered, and I could see immediately that she'd been crying. Sarah, did you tell Brad where you're staying? Her face crumpled. He kept calling and texting, getting more and more angry. Finally, he said, if I didn't tell him exactly where I was, he was going to drive to Mom and Dad's house and tell them that I was having an affair with someone in France. I couldn't let him hurt them with lies, so I told him the address. Sarah, Brad is on his way here. He'll be landing in Marseille in about 8 hours. What? Sarah stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee cup. Robin, he can't come here. He doesn't have money for international travel. He borrowed money against your car title without telling you. Sarah's face went white. He used my car as collateral? But I need my car to get to work. That's my only way to. She stopped mid-sentence as the full implication hit her. Robin, he's been planning this. He's been planning to control my ability to leave, even if I wanted to. Sarah, we need to talk to Jake. He has experience with these kinds of situations, and he can help us figure out how to handle Brad's arrival safely. Jake was already on his phone when we found him, coordinating with local authorities about the situation. The good news is that Brad has no legal standing here, Jake explained after he hung up. He can't force Sarah to leave, he can't enter the property without permission, and if he becomes threatening or abusive, French authorities will remove him. But, I could hear the but in his voice. But men like Brad don't think rationally when they feel their control is threatened. His escalation pattern suggests he might do something dramatic or dangerous. Claire joined us on the terrace, looking concerned. Should we ask the other family members to leave? I don't want anyone else to be affected by this. Actually, Jake said, having family witnesses here might be the safest thing for Sarah. Brad's more likely to control his behavior if there are multiple people present. My grandmother Dorothy, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I'm not going anywhere. That young man has been hurting my granddaughter, and he's going to learn that this family doesn't tolerate abuse. Grandma, this could get ugly. Robin, I've lived through the Great Depression, World War II, and raising 4 children during the Civil Rights Movement. I can handle one abusive boy who thinks he can intimidate women. Sarah looked around at all of us and started crying again. I'm so sorry I brought this drama into your beautiful celebration. This is exactly why Brad said you'd all get tired of dealing with my problems. Sarah, I said firmly, this isn't your drama. This is a dangerous man threatening our family, and we protect our family. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone started buzzing with calls from an international number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer, but the voicemails Brad left became progressively more aggressive. Robin, I know Sarah's there. Tell her to call me immediately. This is ridiculous, Robin. She's my wife, and she belongs at home with me. I'm landing in 2 hours, and I'm coming to get my wife. You can't keep her from me. You think you're so much better than everyone else with your money and your fancy house. We'll see how fancy you feel when I show up. Jake listened to the voicemails and shook his head. This guy is escalating rapidly. Sarah, I need you to understand something important. Brad isn't coming here because he loves you and misses you. He's coming here because he's lost control over you, and that threatens his identity. What do you mean? Men like Brad define themselves by their ability to control their partners. When you traveled here independently and started making decisions without his permission, you challenged the foundation of how he sees himself. He's not coming to France to bring you home. He's coming to reassert dominance. So what do? We document everything. We stay calm, and we don't let him isolate you from your support system. At 4:30, a taxi pulled up the villa's driveway. Through the window, I could see Brad in the back seat, and even from a distance, his body language looked aggressive and agitated. Jake positioned himself near the front door while I stayed with Sarah in the main living area. Claire made sure the other family members were in the back garden area, close enough to help if needed but far enough away to stay safe. Brad paid the taxi driver and walked up to the front door. Instead of knocking, he immediately started pounding on it. Sarah! Sarah! I know you're in there. Open this door right now. Jake opened the door, his military bearing evident in his posture and voice. You need to calm down and lower your voice. There are families with children on this property. Who the hell are you? I want to see my wife. I'm a friend of the family. Sarah is here voluntarily, and she can choose whether or not she wants to speak with you. Choose? She doesn't get to choose. She's my wife, and she's coming home with me right now. Brad tried to push past Jake, but Jake blocked him easily. Sir, you need to step back. You weren't invited here, and you can't enter this property without permission. That's when Brad started shouting loud enough for the whole villa to hear. Sarah, get out here right now. I spent every penny I had to come get you, and you're not going to embarrass me like this. Sarah appeared beside me, her face pale but determined. I'll talk to him, she said quietly. If I don't, he'll just get worse. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do, but I want you and Jake to stay close. Okay? Sarah walked to the front door, staying behind Jake but visible to Brad. Brad, you need to calm down. You're scaring people. I'm scaring people? You're the one who ran away to France without permission. You're the one who's been posting pictures of yourself having a great time while I'm at home worried sick. I didn't run away. I came here for a business opportunity. Business opportunity? Brad laughed bitterly. You mean your brother's charity project where he pays you to pretend to work so he can feel good about himself? That's not what this is. Yes, it is. Just like everything else with your family. Robin throws money around to make himself feel important, and everyone else is supposed to be grateful for his generosity. That's when I stepped into view. Brad, you need to leave. Now. There he is, Mr. Perfect himself. Tell me, Robin, how does it feel to buy people's love? How does it feel to know that everyone only likes you because you have money? How does it feel to know that your wife is happier in 1 week away from you than she's been in months at home with you? That was the wrong thing to say. Brad's face went red and he tried to push past Jake again. You turned her against me. She was fine until you started filling her head with ideas about how much better she could do. Brad, Sarah said, her voice stronger now. Nobody turned me against you. You did that yourself every time you screamed at me, every time you controlled my money, every time you threatened to leave me if I didn't do exactly what you wanted. I never threatened to leave you. I just said that marriages require compromise. Compromise? You mean like when you said you'd leave me if Robin came to Thanksgiving? Or when you said you'd leave me if I visited my grandmother in the hospital? Or when you said you'd leave me if I bought groceries without checking with you first? Brad was quiet for a moment, clearly not expecting Sarah to confront him so directly. Sarah, you're confused. These people have been manipulating you. Come home with me, and we'll work this out. I'm not confused, Brad. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. That's when Brad made his biggest mistake. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder of papers. Fine. If you want to be stupid about this, here are the divorce papers. I already filed them. If you don't come home with me right now, you'll have nothing. No home, no car, no money, nothing. Jake stepped forward. Sir, that sounds like a threat. It's not a threat. It's reality. Sarah signed a prenup that gives her nothing if she abandons the marriage. She comes home with me now, or she comes home to nothing. Sarah looked at the papers, then at Brad, then at me. Brad, I never signed a prenup. Yes, you did. Right before the wedding. You were stressed about other things, and you signed it along with all the other wedding documents. I remember every document I signed before our wedding. There was no prenup. Brad's face went white. He'd been caught in a lie, and from the look on his face, it wasn't his first one. That's when my grandmother Dorothy appeared in the doorway behind Sarah. Young man, she said in a voice that could cut glass. I've been listening to you threaten my granddaughter for the last 10 minutes, and I've heard quite enough. Lady, this is none of your business. My granddaughter's safety is absolutely my business. And you, sir, are a bully and a liar. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know that my granddaughter has been happier and more relaxed in the past week than I've seen her in years. I know that you just admitted to forging legal documents. And I know that any man who has to threaten a woman to keep her is a man who doesn't deserve her. Brad looked around at all of us, Jake blocking his path, Sarah standing strong behind protective family, me documenting everything on my phone, and my 78-year-old grandmother calling him out fearlessly. Fine, he said finally. Sarah, You want to throw away 3 years of marriage for these people who'll get bored with you in 6 months? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back to me when you realize what you've given up. I won't, Sarah said clearly. Because I already know what I've given up. I've given up being afraid, being controlled, and being told I'm not good enough. And I'm never going back to that. Brad threw the fake divorce papers on the ground and stormed back to the taxi. As we watched him drive away, Sarah collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I did it, she whispered. I actually stood up to him. Yes, you did, I said. And you were amazing. But as we helped Sarah inside, I noticed Jake on his phone with a serious expression. What is it? I asked. I'm reporting this to the authorities in both countries, he said. Brad used Sarah's assets without her knowledge to finance this trip. That's fraud. And those fake divorce papers he brought are evidence of his intent to manipulate her with false legal documents. What does that mean? It means Sarah's not just free from an abusive relationship. She's got legal grounds to press charges for financial abuse and fraud. Sarah looked up from where she was sitting with my grandmother. You mean I don't have to be afraid of him anymore? Sarah, Maria Santos, said when I called her an hour later, with the evidence we have, the fraudulent use of your car title, the fake legal documents, the recorded threats. Brad is looking at serious criminal charges. You're not just the victim here. You're the witness who's going to help make sure he can't do this to anyone else. That evening, as we sat on the terrace with the whole family gathered around Sarah, my sister looked different, not just relieved, but confident in a way I hadn't seen in years. Robin, she said, I owe you an apology that goes way beyond Thanksgiving. Sarah, you don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. I helped him isolate me from the family that loves me. I participated in pushing away the people who would have helped me if I'd just been honest about what was happening. My grandmother patted Sarah's hand. Sweetheart, that's what abusive people do. They make you think the abuse is your fault, that asking for help is weakness, and that you don't deserve better. You didn't do anything wrong except trust the wrong person. But I did do something wrong, Sarah insisted. I let him make me afraid of my own brother's success. I let him convince me that Robin's generosity was somehow threatening to my marriage instead of seeing it as love. She looked at me directly. Robin, you've been nothing but good to this family, and I helped my parents exclude you from Thanksgiving because I was too ashamed to admit that my husband was threatened by your kindness. Sarah, what matters is that you're safe now. What matters is that I don't waste any more time being afraid of good things. That night, my phone rang. It was my mother. Robin, your father and I saw the police report on the news. Brad's been arrested for fraud and domestic abuse? Yes, Mom. Sarah's been trapped in an abusive relationship, and you and Dad have been unknowingly enabling it by excluding me from family gatherings to keep him comfortable. There was a long pause. Robin, we had no idea it was that serious. We thought Brad was just insecure about money. Mom, insecurity doesn't justify controlling someone's finances, threatening to abandon them, or using their assets without permission. That's abuse. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. But the important thing now is that Sarah is safe, and we're going to help her rebuild her life. Robin, can we come to France? Can we be there for Sarah? I looked across the terrace at my sister, who was laughing at something Claire's father was saying while my grandmother taught Claire's mother her famous stuffing recipe. Mom, Sarah's surrounded by family, who love her and support her. If you want to be part of that, you're welcome here. But you need to understand that protecting this family means not enabling abusive behavior, even when it's uncomfortable to confront it. We understand. Robin, we're so sorry. I know you are, Mom. Come to France. Let's be a family again. 3 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of my California home, watching Sarah teach Claire how to make my grandmother's cornbread recipe while they planned the menu for our Christmas gathering. Sarah had moved into my guest house after we returned from France, but it was clear this arrangement was temporary. She was getting stronger every day. The legal proceedings against Brad had moved quickly once authorities in both countries coordinated their evidence. The fraudulent use of Sarah's car title, the fake divorce papers, and the recorded threats from his visit to France had built an airtight case. Brad pled guilty to multiple charges including fraud, financial abuse, and criminal threatening. He was serving an 18-month sentence and would be required to attend anger management and financial responsibility courses upon his release. More importantly for Sarah, the case had established a clear legal record of the abuse, which allowed her to reclaim her financial independence completely. With Maria Santos's help, Sarah had recovered all her assets that Brad had hidden or controlled, plus damages for the emotional and financial harm he'd caused. But the real transformation wasn't legal or financial. It was personal. Sarah had started therapy immediately upon returning to California, working with a counselor who specialized in domestic abuse recovery. At first, she'd been frustrated by how long it was taking her to trust her own judgment again. But gradually, she was rediscovering the confident, independent woman she'd been before Brad's manipulation. "I keep waiting to feel guilty about pressing charges," Sarah told me one evening as we walked through my neighborhood. "But instead, I feel proud. Not just because I stood up for myself, but because maybe other women will be safer, because Brad's pattern of behavior is now on legal record." Sarah had also started working with Elena on legitimate business projects, including the French artisanal import venture that had begun as a rescue mission but had evolved into a real opportunity. Sarah's attention to detail and natural understanding of customer relationships were proving valuable in building partnerships with small French producers. "It's funny," Sarah said as she reviewed import contracts. "I actually am good at business. I just never had the chance to find out because Brad convinced me that I wasn't smart enough for anything important. My parents had come to France for Christmas, and the difference in family dynamics was remarkable." Helen and Robert had spent months in therapy themselves, working to understand how their fear of confrontation and their desire to keep peace had actually enabled Sarah's abuse. "We kept telling ourselves that Brad's behavior wasn't our business," my father admitted during a long conversation by the fireplace. "We thought supporting Sarah meant not questioning her choices, but what we were really doing was avoiding the hard work of actually protecting her. We were so afraid of Sarah thinking we disapproved of her husband that we let her disappear into an abusive relationship without fighting for her," my mother added. "And then, when Brad felt threatened by your success, Robin, we chose his comfort over your inclusion rather than addressing the real problem." The healing process hadn't been simple or quick. There were still moments when old patterns emerged, when my parents instinctively tried to avoid conflict rather than address problems directly. But the difference now was awareness. They recognized these moments and corrected course. The most meaningful change was in how our family handled gatherings. Instead of walking on eggshells around problematic behavior, we'd learned to set clear boundaries and expectations. Family celebrations were for people who wanted to celebrate together, not for people who needed to control or diminish others. Our Christmas gathering included the same extended family who'd come to Thanksgiving in France, plus several new additions: Sarah's therapist and her husband, who had become friends; Maria Santos and her family, who were visiting California for the holidays; and 3 other domestic abuse survivors Sarah had met through her support group. "I love that our family table keeps expanding with people who understand that love means showing up," my grandmother Dorothy said, as she surveyed the crowded dining room. But the most surprising addition to our family circle was the nonprofit Sarah had started with the settlement money from her legal case against Brad. Second Chances. Financial Recovery provided emergency funds, legal support, and financial education to domestic abuse survivors who needed help establishing independence. "I know what it's like to feel trapped because someone else controls your money," Sarah explained to a local news reporter who was covering the nonprofit's launch. "I know what it's like to think you can't leave because you don't have anywhere to go. I want other women to have options I didn't think I had." The nonprofit had already helped 12 women establish safe, independent living situations, and Sarah was working with state legislators on bills that would make financial abuse easier to prosecute and prevent. "It turns out," Sarah told me, "that the skills Brad thought made me a good victim, attention to detail, determination, loyalty, actually make me a pretty effective advocate." On Christmas Eve, as our extended family gathered around the fire pit in my backyard, Claire and I officially announced our engagement. We'd decided to have the wedding at the French villa the following fall, and Sarah was going to be my best woman. "Sarah," I said during the toast, "I can't imagine having anyone else stand beside me when I marry Claire. You've shown me what real courage looks like." "Robin," Sarah replied, raising her glass, "you saved my life. Not just from Brad, but from believing that I didn't deserve better. You showed me that family means creating space for everyone to thrive, not just maintaining false peace." My grandmother, Dorothy, now 79, and still the sharpest person in any room, stood up for the final toast of the evening. "I want to say something about family," she began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "I've lived long enough to see families torn apart by secrets, by fear, by the desire to avoid difficult conversations. And I've lived long enough to see families healed by truth, by courage, and by the willingness to fight for each other." She looked around the circle at faces illuminated by firelight. 3 generations of our family, plus the friends who had chosen to become family, plus the women Sarah was helping, who were learning what healthy family relationships looked like. "Real family isn't about blood," Dorothy continued. "It's about who shows up. It's about who creates safety for others to be themselves. It's about who refuses to let you settle for less than you deserve. And it's about who has the courage to say hard truths when love requires it." She raised her glass. "To the family we choose, and to the courage to keep choosing love over fear." As everyone raised their glasses and the conversation resumed, I found myself thinking about the text message that had started this entire journey. "We want a peaceful holiday with Sarah's family this year. Maybe skip this one?" My parents had thought they were choosing peace, but they were actually choosing avoidance. Real peace doesn't come from avoiding difficult people or situations. It comes from creating environments where everyone can be safe, honest, and genuinely themselves. The greatest gift I'd received wasn't the success of my business, or the beauty of my French villa, or even the love I'd found with Claire. The greatest gift was understanding that family strength comes from lifting each other up, not from maintaining false harmony at the expense of truth and safety. I'd learned that sometimes protecting the people you love means setting boundaries with those who take advantage of kindness. I'd learned that true generosity isn't just about providing resources, but about creating space for people to discover their own strength and worth. Most importantly, I'd learned that when you stand up for someone who's been told they don't matter, you don't just change their life. You change the entire family's understanding of what love actually means. As I looked around the fire pit at Sarah, animatedly discussing nonprofit strategy with Maria Santos, at Claire, and my mother planning wedding details, at my father teaching my cousin's teenagers how to properly toast marshmallows, and at my grandmother holding court with stories that had everyone laughing, I realized this was what I'd been trying to create all along. Not perfection, not even traditional family harmony, but authentic connection between people who genuinely cared about each other's well-being and happiness. The villa in France had been beautiful, and our Thanksgiving celebration there had been magical. But this backyard gathering in California, with its mix of family and chosen family, its blend of healing and celebration, its combination of honesty and hope, was even more meaningful. Because it wasn't just about bringing people together for one special occasion. It was about creating a foundation for the kind of family relationships that could weather any storm, celebrate any success, and provide safety for anyone who needed it. That night, as Claire and I cleaned up while Sarah finished a phone call with one of her nonprofit clients, I reflected on how dramatically our family had changed in just 6 months. We'd gone from a family that avoided difficult conversations to one that addressed problems directly. We'd gone from enabling destructive behavior to protecting each other from it. We'd gone from measuring love by how much drama we were willing to tolerate to measuring it by how much growth and healing we were willing to support. And we'd learned that the most loving thing you can sometimes do is refuse to participate in someone's efforts to make their problems everyone else's responsibility. I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where keeping peace in your family required you to compromise your own values or enable someone else's destructive behavior? How did you handle it? And what would you do differently if you could go back? I'm grateful you took the time to listen to my story today. If it resonated with you, or if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of setting healthy family boundaries, please share this story. And if you'd like to hear more stories about family, relationships, and personal growth, please subscribe to see my future content. Remember, real family love isn't about avoiding all conflict. It's about creating safety for truth, growth, and genuine connection. Thanks for being here, and I wish you the courage to choose love over fear in your own family relationships.